Chapter 1. The Intertwining of Fates. Emily Green sat by the window of the library of the famous institution of higher learning. The soft light shone through the mottled colored glass and fell on the book she opened. She was the daughter of the Green family. The family was very important in the local area. The industry was spread across various fields, from high-end commercial buildings in the bustling city to large factory parks in the suburbs, which demonstrated the family's strong strength. Emily had a sweet appearance and outstanding temperament. Her long chestnut hair fell naturally on her shoulders, attracting many people's attention. But she was not proud and complacent because of this. Instead, she worked very hard and pursued excellence in her studies. At this time, she was concentrating on the economics book in her hand, and from time to time she used her slender fingers to gently stroke the pages of the book, thinking about the complex theories in the book. Just as she was immersed in the ocean of knowledge, a figure outside the window caught her attention. It was a boy wearing a denim jacket that was washed a little white, a pair of worn jeans on the lower body, and the sneakers on his feet were also worn out. He was squatting on the steps in front of the library, taking out a sandwich that didn't look fresh from a wrinkled paper bag and eating it in big mouthfuls. Although he was dressed very poorly, he had a unique temperament, and his eyes were full of determination and persistence. Emily looked at the boy and felt a little curious. She noticed that this was the third time she had seen him at this time and place this week. Moreover, she remembered that in the lecture hall yesterday, this boy boldly refuted the theoretical model proposed by the professor in the seminar of the economics department with precise data and clear logic. His eloquent speech amazed everyone in the classroom. Emily closed the book, stood up and walked out of the library. She walked straight towards the boy. The boy noticed someone approaching and raised his head. The embarrassment of being caught instantly surged to his cheeks, and the tips of his ears turned red. "Hello," Emily greeted with a smile, her voice clear and pleasant. "I've noticed you for a long time, you have a lot of insights in learning." The boy stood up a little awkwardly, holding the unfinished sandwich in his hand. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Thank you, I just expressed my thoughts." "My name is Emily." Emily introduced herself generously. "I think you have great potential and should not be buried." As she said that, she took out the check that her father had just sent her from her bag and handed it to the boy. "Take this money and buy some school supplies to improve your life." The boy looked at the check and his expression on his face became complicated in an instant. A trace of struggle flashed in his eyes, and then a flame of almost humiliation burned in his eyes. He stretched out his hand suddenly, tore the check in half, threw it on the ground and said loudly, "I don't need your pity. Although I am poor, I have my own dignity. I will rely on my own efforts to realize my dreams, and I don't need charity from others." After that, he turned around and walked away quickly, leaving Emily standing there in astonishment. Emily looked at the boy's back as he left, feeling surprised and in awe. She was surprised at his strong self-esteem and admired his stubbornness in upholding his dignity in difficult situations. After a while, Emily came back to her senses. She squatted down, carefully picked up the check that was torn in half on the ground, and carefully smoothed out the wrinkles. She looked at the check in her hand and thought to herself, "This boy is really special, different from the people I have met before. I must talk to him again, maybe I can help him." That night, Emily lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The boy's figure and his words kept echoing in her mind. She remembered that she had lived in a wealthy environment since she was a child, and she had everything she wanted, and she had never experienced the taste of poverty. And that boy, although from a poor family, had such a firm belief and strong self-esteem, which made her very interested in him. The next day, Emily came to the library early, hoping to meet the boy again. She sat down in the same seat as yesterday, looking out the window from time to time. However, a whole day passed and the boy did not show up. Emily was a little disappointed, but she did not give up. In the next few days she would wait in the library every day, but she never saw the familiar figure. Just when she was about to be disappointed, one afternoon, the boy finally appeared on the steps in front of the library again. Emily immediately stood up and walked out of the library quickly. This time she did not take out the check directly but walked to the boy and said softly, "Hello, we meet again. I'm sorry about what happened last time. I don't want to pity you, but I really think you are very talented and don't want you to give up your dream because of financial reasons." The boy looked at Emily and the vigilance in his eyes relaxed a little. He was silent for a moment and said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have lost my temper with you that day, I understand, Emily interrupted him. Everyone has their own bottom line and dignity. I shouldn't be so reckless. In fact, there is a small academic salon at my house tonight, and many well-known scholars and experts will participate. I think you will be interested. Do you want to go together? The boy hesitated for a moment and his heart was very entangled. On the one hand, he longed for the opportunity to contact those outstanding scholars and broaden his horizons. On the other hand, he was worried that going to participate would make him look like accepting Emily's charity. Emily seemed to see his concerns and smiled and said, "Just think of it as going to exchange and learn. Everyone comes for knowledge, there is no other meaning. Moreover, I believe that with your ability, you will definitely shine there." The boy thought for a while, finally nodded and said, "Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity." Emily laughed happily and said, "That's great, I'll send you the address later, remember to come on time." Looking at Emily's back as she left, a complex emotion surged in the boy's heart. He didn't know whether this decision was right or wrong, but he knew that this might be an opportunity for him to change his fate. He secretly made up his mind to perform well in this academic salon, let everyone see his strength and prove that he could succeed without relying on the pity of others. Chapter 2. The Undercurrent of Marriage. 7 years later, the once green campus days have quietly gone away, and Emily and Derek have been married for some time. On Christmas Eve of this year, in the private art gallery, the crystal chandelier cast a bright light, reflecting the art treasures on the wall. Emily, wearing a gorgeous evening dress, slowly walked to the display cabinet, where her self-portrait in her teenage years was placed. The edge of the frame was engraved with the date when Derek proposed to her affectionately. Recalling the past, those sweet moments are still vivid. Derek, the poor boy who once struggled for his studies and couldn't even afford a decent lunch, has now emerged in the business world with the support of Emily's family and his own efforts. With strong financial resources and extensive connections, the Emily family paved a smooth road for Derek's career development. They invested in Derek's entrepreneurial projects, introduced various high-end resources, and helped him to succeed step by step. "Dear." Derek came behind Emily at some point and gently hugged her waist. But the familiar hug made Emily feel a little strange at this moment. The smell of cigars and hospital disinfectants mixed on Derek's body went straight into her nose, making her frown slightly. "Will you accompany me to visit new medical equipment in other places tomorrow? This is crucial to the development of the company." Derek's tone was a bit unacceptable. Emily forced a smile, but she felt a little helpless in her heart. Over the years, as Derek's career flourished, he became busier and busier, and the time they spent together became less and less. The romance under the flowers and the moon has long been replaced by busy work and various social activities. But Emily has always believed that their feelings are as solid as a rock, and no matter how many difficulties they can overcome together. It was late at night and the whole villa fell into silence. Emily was awakened by a slight noise. She opened her eyes in a daze and found that Derek was not in bed. She put on her nightgown, walked out of the bedroom quietly and followed the sound to the door of the study. Through the half-open door, she saw Derek busy in front of the safe with his back to her. Derek hurriedly stuffed a stack of documents into the safe. The top document was particularly eye-catching. Emily looked closely and found that it was a personal accident insurance policy. The beneficiary column clearly wrote Derek's name. Emily felt a buzz in her head and woke up instantly. She subconsciously covered her mouth and dared not make any sound, but her heart was beating wildly in her chest. She quietly retreated to the bedroom, lay on the bed, looked at the ceiling, and her thoughts were in a mess. She tried to recall Derek's recent abnormal behavior. 3 months ago, she smelled a strange gardenia scent on Derek's cuffs, which was definitely not the perfume she often used. Although she felt puzzled at the time, she did not think much about it and just thought that he had accidentally got it while socializing outside. But now it seems that everything is not that simple. In the following days, Emily acted as if nothing had happened, but she began to secretly pay attention to Derek's every move. She found that Derek came home later and later, and he looked tired and irritable every time he came back. Once she accidentally heard Derek arguing with someone on the phone, and he mentioned a large sum of money and a plan that could not go wrong, but the specific content was not very clear. Finally, one weekend afternoon, Derek received a mysterious call and hurried out. Emily was suspicious and decided to follow him secretly. She followed Derek's car from a distance and came to a remote private club. She hid in the corner and watched Derek and a woman in a business suit walk into the club. The woman was tall and had a cold temperament. Judging from the intimate posture when she talked to Derek, the relationship between the two was by no means ordinary. Emily felt a strong sense of uneasiness in her heart and she couldn't believe her eyes. Did the husband who had been affectionate to her and vowed to accompany her for life really betray her? She suppressed her inner pain and anger and decided not to alarm the snake and secretly investigate the truth of the matter. Emily began to use her connections to quietly inquire about the identity of the woman. After some efforts, she learned that the woman was the chief physician of the oncology department of a private hospital, named Amanda. Why would a doctor have such close contacts with Derek? Moreover, is the medical project that Derek has frequently mentioned recently related to the hospital where Amanda works? In order to find more clues, Emily secretly searched his study when Derek was not at home. In a hidden drawer, she found some documents recording some complex financial transactions and medical equipment procurement contracts. Some of the clauses seemed to be problematic, but she could not sort out the specific details for a while. As the investigation deepened, Emily's fear became stronger and stronger. She realized that she might be caught in a huge conspiracy. And the planner of this conspiracy is likely to be her most trusted husband, Derek. She didn't know what to do. On the one hand, she didn't want to believe that Derek would betray her. On the other hand, all kinds of signs forced her to face the cruel reality. In extreme pain and entanglement, Emily decided to confront Derek. She wanted to hear his explanation in person. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. So one night when Derek came home, Emily plucked up the courage to put the insurance policy and the documents she had investigated in front of him. "Derek, what's going on?" Emily tried to keep her voice calm, but her trembling tones still exposed her inner excitement. When Derek saw these things, his face turned pale in an instant. He opened his mouth and wanted to explain but was speechless for a while. After a long while he stammered, "Dear, listen to my explanation. This is all for our future." "I had no choice." "Had no choice?" Emily sneered. "What you mean by for our future is to plot against me, buy insurance for me and collude with other women?" Derek shook his head and tried to hold Emily's hand, but she shook him off. "Emily, I really didn't betray you. I just encountered a lot of trouble in my business recently. The capital chain was broken and I needed this insurance money to turn around. That woman, she just had business dealings with me, don't think too much." Emily looked at Derek's panic and her disappointment reached its peak. She no longer believed any of his explanations, turned back to the room and closed the door heavily. She knew that their marriage might never go back. And what was waiting for her would be an unknown storm. Chapter 3. The Outline of the Conspiracy. After that heartbreaking showdown night, Emily's life fell into a deadlock that was calm on the surface but turbulent in reality. Although she and Derek still lived under the same roof, they were like strangers. Every time they looked at each other, there was only coldness and alienation. On the surface, Emily maintained the rhythm of her life in the past, but her heart was running wildly. She knew that she could no longer sit and wait for death, and she had to take the initiative to uncover all the conspiracies hidden behind Derek. One morning, when Emily was still immersed in broken thoughts, the housekeeper walked into the room with a solemn look and handed over a tablet. "Madam, this is the dashcam video you asked me to pay attention to before." The housekeeper's voice was low with a hint of hesitation. Emily took the tablet, her fingers trembling slightly. She took a deep breath and clicked the play button. In the picture, a remote alley appeared in front of her, surrounded by debris and filled with a rotten smell. Derek appeared wearing a dark windbreaker, looking around in panic, and then took out a syringe from his pocket. A stray cat was curled up in the corner with helplessness in its eyes. Derek approached step by step and without hesitation he inserted the syringe into the stray cat's vein. The cat let out a faint scream, struggled a few times and stopped moving. Emily covered her mouth, suppressing her nausea and anger. At this time another woman appeared in the picture. It was Amanda. She was wearing a slim professional suit and high heels, and walked to Derek with elegant steps. The two talked in a low voice with serious and mysterious expressions on their faces. Although there was no sound in the video, Emily could feel a sense of guilt from their body movements and expressions. Emily watched the video several times, and she noticed that the date of the video was the day after she was diagnosed with acute leukemia. An ominous premonition came to her mind, and she began to wonder if her diagnosis of the disease was also related to Derek and Amanda. In order to find more clues, Emily decided to start from Derek's study. She took the opportunity when Derek was out and carefully opened the door of the study. The study was filled with an old smell, and the bookshelves were filled with various business books and documents. Emily began to search carefully, not missing any corner and carefully checking every document. In a hidden drawer, Emily found an exquisite sandalwood box. Her heartbeat accelerated, and her intuition told her that the box might contain a vital secret. She opened the box with trembling hands, and it was indeed full of yellowed documents and letters. Emily looked through them one by one, and suddenly, a remittance slip caught her attention. The date on the remittance slip was December 15, 1998. The remitter was Green Group, which was her family business, and the recipient was an unfamiliar construction company. The remittance amount was as high as $3 million. What was the purpose of such a huge sum of money? Emily continued to look for relevant clues, and soon she found a newspaper from that year. The newspaper headline read, "Construction site accident caused 5 deaths." The construction site in the photo was in a mess and rescue workers were busy. Emily read the report carefully and found that the construction company where the accident occurred was the one that received the remittance from Green Group. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Didn't Derek's mother die on December 15, 1998? Is it possible that all these are inextricably linked? The more Emily thought about it, the more terrible she felt. She began to suspect that Derek approached her and married her for some ulterior motive. In order to confirm her guess, Emily decided to visit the relevant personnel who handled the construction site accident that year. She found a retired policeman through her family's connections. The policeman had participated in the accident investigation that year. Although a long time had passed, he still remembered some details. That accident was very strange, the police recalled. The construction company had serious safety hazards. Logically, it should not have been approved to start construction. But for some reason the project went smoothly. After the accident, we found that some key evidence was missing inexplicably, which led to a deadlock in the investigation of the case. Later, the matter was left unresolved. Emily's heart tightened and she asked, "Do you know what the relationship is between Green Group and this construction company?" The police frowned, thought for a moment and said, "At that time, there were rumors that Green Group injected capital into the construction company to help them through the difficulties. But I don't know the specific situation." After coming out of the police, Emily's mood was extremely heavy. She has basically determined that Derek's mother's death is related to the construction site accident, and her family may have become part of Derek's revenge plan without knowing it. Now, in order to achieve his goal, Derek is willing to hurt her and may even be planning something more terrible. After returning home, Emily sat on the sofa in the living room and fell into deep thought. She realized that she was facing not only her husband's betrayal, but also a conspiracy that had been carefully planned for many years. She had to find a solution as soon as possible to protect herself and clear the family of possible grievances. At this time, the doorbell rang suddenly. Emily got up to open the door and a strange man stood outside the door. The man was wearing a black suit and had a serious expression. He introduced himself as a private detective, commissioned by a mysterious person to deliver an important document to Emily. Emily took the document in doubt and opened it. There were some investigation documents about Derek and Amanda. The document recorded in detail their financial dealings, secret meeting places, and some unknown transaction details. What shocked Emily even more was that the document also mentioned that Derek had mortgaged most of their property in order to repay the huge gambling debts, and was planning a bigger conspiracy, and her life was in extreme danger. Looking at the information in her hand, Emily's hands trembled. She knew that she had no time to hesitate. She must take action as soon as possible to expose Derek's conspiracy and make the truth known to the world. Otherwise, she will fall into an abyss of no return. Chapter 4. The Chess Game of Revenge. After receiving the information sent by the private detective, Emily stayed up all night. Those ironclad evidences were like sharp broken glass, cutting her heart piece by piece, and completely ignited the burning anger of revenge in her heart. As soon as the sky turned pale, Emily stood up, looked at the haggard but determined self in the mirror, and swore secretly, "Derek, I will repay the pain you have brought me 1,000 times." She knew in her heart that to completely bring Derek down, it was far from enough to rely on these materials alone, and she had to think carefully and plan carefully. At this time, Amanda became a crucial part of her revenge plan. After some in-depth inquiries, Emily learned that behind Amanda's seemingly glamorous life, there was actually an unspeakable dilemma. Her husband was diagnosed with advanced liver cancer, and the astronomical treatment costs were dragging the family into the abyss of despair bit by bit. A careful plan gradually took shape in Emily's mind. She asked Amanda to meet at a hidden cafe. When Amanda received the call, she was full of doubts, but she also had a vague, ominous premonition. After hesitating for a long time, she decided to go to the appointment. Amanda walked into the cafe and saw Emily sitting in the corner at a glance. Her eyes flashed a trace of panic, but she quickly pretended to be calm and walked over. "Emily, what do you want to talk to me about?" Amanda's voice trembled slightly, trying to hide her inner tension. Emily raised her head and looked directly at Amanda with a sneer on her lips. "Amanda, let's not beat around the bush. I know about the shady things between you and Derek, and I know your husband's condition." As she spoke, Emily pushed a document in front of Amanda. "This is your husband's advanced liver cancer diagnosis, and the detailed cost of subsequent treatment. I think you must be very anxious about the money now." Amanda's face turned pale as paper in an instant. She trembled as she picked up the document, and her hands shook uncontrollably. What do you want to do?" Amanda raised her head, her eyes full of fear and despair. Emily looked at Amanda's reaction and a sense of revenge surged in her heart, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't want to do anything, I just want to make a deal with you. As long as you help me get the equity transfer agreement signed by Derek, I can bear all the treatment costs of your husband, and I can also ensure that he gets the best medical treatment." Amanda fell into hesitation, struggling painfully in her heart. On the one hand, she knew that betraying Derek might bring terrible consequences. On the other hand, her husband's life was in danger and she couldn't bear to see him suffer. "You don't have to rush to answer me," Emily seemed to see through Amanda's mind. "You go back and think about it. But I have to remind you that time waits for no one, and your husband's condition may worsen at any time. Moreover, once I expose your scandal, not only will you not be able to save your husband, but you will also lose your reputation and have nothing." Amanda gritted her teeth and finally nodded. "Okay, I promise you. But you must promise that you will keep your promise after getting the agreement." "Don't worry, I'll do what I say." Emily smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in that smile. After coming out of the cafe, Amanda returned home, lay on the bed, looked at the ceiling, and her heart was in a mess. She thought of the secret transactions with Derek, each of which made her feel uneasy, but she was blinded by money and chose to compromise again and again. And now for her husband, she had to betray Derek again. At the same time, Emily was not idle. She began to collect more evidence about Derek's illegal business activities, contacted people in the business circle, used family connections, and asked for information everywhere. After a deep digging, she found that Derek was not only involved in smuggling, but also suspected of commercial fraud. His crime was much more serious than she thought. On the other hand, Derek was unaware of Emily and Amanda's plan and was immersed in his own conspiracy. He thought Emily was still in the dark and was heading towards death step by step according to his plan. That day, he came to the private club as usual to discuss the next plan with several business partners. Just as he and his partners were chatting enthusiastically, Emily suddenly pushed the door open. The moment Derek saw Emily, a flash of surprise flashed across his face, but he quickly regained his composure. "What are you doing here?" Emily ignored Derek, walked straight to him and threw a document on the table fiercely. "Derek, look at what this is." Derek picked up the document and his face turned livid in an instant. The document detailed his recent illegal transactions and the recording of his phone calls with Amanda. Each piece of evidence was enough to send him into an abyss of no return. How do you have these?" Derek glared at Emily angrily with murderous intent in his eyes. Emily sneered. "Do you think you are doing it secretly? Let me tell you, I know everything you do. Just wait for the severe punishment of the law." After that, Emily turned around and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Derek suddenly rushed forward and tried to grab Emily. At this moment, Amanda rushed in with several security guards and held Derek tightly. Derek, I'm sorry, I'm doing this for my husband. Amanda looked at Derek with a trace of guilt in her eyes. Derek looked at Amanda and roared, "You traitor." Emily turned around and looked at the subdued Derek without a trace of pity in her heart. "Derek, you asked for all this. From the moment you betrayed me, you should have expected this day." Although Derek was temporarily controlled, Emily knew that things were far from over. The equity transfer agreement was not yet in hand, and she had to strike while the iron was hot and get Derek to sign the agreement to completely crush his conspiracy. And every step that followed would be more difficult and dangerous, and she had to concentrate and not make any mistakes. Chapter 5. Snow Valley Ending. Emily knew that the equity transfer agreement was the key to bringing Derek to justice, and she thought of a perfect opportunity: the Snow Mountain vacation that Derek had been planning. She pretended to be indifferent on the surface and even took the initiative to bring up the matter. Derek really took the bait, thinking that Emily was still in the dark, and readily agreed. On the day of departure, Emily gently helped Derek pack his luggage as usual, but she was thinking about every detail in her heart. She contacted the police in advance and told them her plan. The police promised to meet them in secret, but everything depended on her to stabilize the situation first. When they arrived at the Snow Mountain Resort, there were fine snowflakes floating in the sky, and the surroundings were silvery white. Derek seemed to be enjoying the snow scene easily, but Emily knew that he might be planning something unspeakable in his heart. The villa was empty and extremely quiet. Emily deliberately said, "It's so quiet here, it feels like we are the only ones in the world." Derek smiled, and that smile seemed extremely hypocritical to Emily. At night, Emily secretly drugged Derek's wine while preparing dinner. Her hands trembled slightly, worried that Derek would notice, but when she thought of his crimes, she mustered up her courage. At dinner, Derek drank the wine without any defense and kept talking about some insignificant things, but his eyes revealed a hint of weirdness from time to time. Not long after the drug began to take effect, Derek's eyes became blurred, and his body gradually lost control. Emily looked at him, took a deep breath, and took out the evidence that had been prepared, including the bills of illegal transactions, his chat records with Amanda, and some information from the police investigation, and placed them in front of him. "Derek, your crimes have all been exposed," Emily said coldly, her voice echoing in the silent room. Derek widened his eyes and tried to struggle to stand up, but fell heavily to the ground. "How dare you?" His voice was full of anger and unwillingness. Emily ignored his roar and continued, "You betrayed me for your own selfish desires and committed so many unforgivable crimes. Today is your doom." Derek realized at this time that he was completely tricked by Emily. He tried to delay time and said, "Emily, we can discuss it. I can return the money to you. Please let me go this time." "Discuss? Do you think I will still believe you?" Emily sneered. "From the time you bought those insurances for me and colluded with Amanda, there was no turning back." Just then there was a sudden gust of wind outside and the windows were blown clanging. Derek took advantage of Emily's distraction and tried his last bit of strength to snatch the evidence from her. Emily was prepared and quickly retreated. Derek missed and fell to the ground. "Don't waste your energy, Derek," Emily said. "The police will be here soon, you can't escape." Derek lay on the ground with despair in his eyes, but he was still unwilling to fail. He began to threaten Emily. "Do you think you won? Even if I go to jail, my accomplices will not let you go. Don't worry, since I dare to do this, I am not afraid of your threats," Emily said firmly. "The police have already got the clues of your so-called accomplices, and none of them can escape." Time passed by minute, and Derek's consciousness became more and more blurred, but he kept cursing. Emily stood quietly aside, looking at the man she once loved deeply, without a trace of pity in her heart. She thought of the past, and those beautiful memories now seemed to be ironic. Finally, the sound of sirens came from outside. Emily knew that her revenge plan was about to succeed. The police rushed into the room and handcuffed Derek. When Derek was taken out of the room, he looked at Emily viciously. "You will regret it." "No, I won't regret it," Emily said. "I just take back what belongs to me and let the truth come to light." When the police searched Derek's belongings, they found more evidence of his crimes, which was enough to subject him to severe legal sanctions. Emily returned to the city with the police. She finally got rid of this nightmare marriage and got justice for herself and those who were hurt by Derek. Back home, Emily sat on the sofa, looking at the city night view outside the window, feeling a lot of emotion in her heart. She once thought that love could conquer everything, but she didn't expect that the greed and ugliness of human nature would destroy all the good things. But she was not defeated but became stronger. In the following days, Emily actively cooperated with the police investigation and provided more clues. In court, she bravely stood up to testify against Derek's crimes, and every word was full of power. In the end, Derek was sentenced to heavy punishment for attempted murder, insurance fraud, commercial crime, and other crimes. After Emily successfully avenged herself, she did not immerse herself in the joy of victory. She knew that there were many women like her who might be suffering from betrayal and harm. So she decided to use her experience to help more people. She set up a public welfare organization to provide legal aid and psychological support for women who suffered domestic violence and betrayal. In this process, Emily met many women with similar experiences as her, and their stories made her more determined in her beliefs. She told them with her actions not to be afraid, not to give up, and to stand up bravely to defend their rights. Emily herself gradually regained her confidence and freedom in this process. She began to pursue her dreams again, learning her favorite art courses and participating in various social activities. She, who was once bound by marriage, has now emerged from her cocoon and become a brave and independent woman. Chapter 6: Rebirth. When the gavel of the court fell, Derek was sentenced to a heavy sentence for multiple crimes. This news was like a heavy hammer, breaking the last shackles of Emily's past life. The moment she walked out of the court, the sun poured down. Emily took a deep breath, and felt that the haze that had been pressing on her heart for many years finally dissipated completely. She knew that the door to a new life had been opened. Back to the house that was once full of memories, Emily looked at everything around her that was familiar and unfamiliar, and her heart was as calm as water. The past scenes of her life with Derek flashed through her mind like a revolving lantern. From the initial sweet love to the later betrayal and calculation, each and every one of them made her feel a lot of emotions. But at this moment she no longer had anger and sadness, only relief for the past and expectations for the future. She acted quickly and packed up all the items related to Derek in the house one by one. Watching these items carrying painful memories being moved away, she seemed to be peeling off her past self bit by bit. While sorting out old things, Emily found a dusty album in the corner of the attic. Opening the album, the laughter and joy of the past seemed to still echo in her ears, but the photos that recorded their happy times could no longer arouse ripples in her heart. Her fingers gently stroked the photos, her heart full of emotion. Once she thought that love was all of life, but she never expected to be betrayed and hurt so deeply. But it was these painful experiences that made her learn to be strong and learn to re-examine her life. Emily gently closed the album and put it in an old box, preparing to find a suitable place to seal it up, so that these memories would become the past forever. Freed from the shackles of the past, Emily began to explore the meaning of life again. She picked up the hobbies that had been put aside because of marriage, and painting and photography became an indispensable part of her life again. She signed up for various art courses and immersed herself in the world of color and light every day. In the painting class, she used her brush to depict her inner emotions and her vision of the future. In the photography class, she carried a camera through the streets and alleys of the city to capture the fleeting, beautiful moments in life. Every work and every photo is filled with her love for life and her yearning for freedom. Her efforts and talents were gradually recognized, and her works began to be exhibited in some small galleries. Seeing her works hung on the wall and receiving the appreciation and praise of others, Emily's heart was full of a sense of accomplishment, and she finally found her own value. In addition to pursuing herself in the field of art, Emily also set her sights on women who had similar experiences as her. She knew that there were still many women in the world who were suffering from domestic violence and betrayal. They needed help and someone to guide them. So Emily resolutely set up a charity organization and devoted herself to helping the victims. In order to make the charity organization run smoothly, Emily ran around to raise funds and recruit volunteers. She rented a small but warm office and decorated it carefully, hoping that it would become a safe haven for victims. Every day she would come to the office early to answer calls for help from all directions. Behind every call is a wounded soul and a heartbreaking story. Emily always listened patiently, comforted them softly, and told them with her own experience, "You are not alone, I will accompany you through this difficult time." In the process of helping many victims, Emily met a lawyer named David. David focuses on marriage, family, and women's rights protection cases. Like Emily, he has a passionate heart and is committed to speaking for those vulnerable groups. Once they worked together on a complex domestic violence case. During the cooperation, Emily was attracted by David's professional ability and strong sense of responsibility, and David also admired Emily's courage and kindness. As their contacts became more frequent, a special feeling gradually developed between the two. However, the pain in the past made Emily cautious when facing feelings. She was afraid of being hurt again, and she was also worried that feelings would affect her focus on public welfare. David was keenly aware of Emily's concerns. He did not rush to confess, but chose to accompany her silently and give her support and encouragement with practical actions. Whether encountering difficulties at work or feeling tired in life, David always appeared at the first time to help Emily solve problems. His sincerity and persistence melted the ice in Emily's heart little by little. Finally, on a warm spring afternoon, David plucked up the courage to confess to Emily. The sun shone on them through the window, and David's eyes were full of affection and expectation. Emily looked at the man in front of her who had accompanied her through many difficult times, and her heart was full of emotion. She knew that she couldn't miss the happiness in front of her because of the shadow of the past. She nodded slightly, a happy smile bloomed on her face, and accepted David's love. At that moment, the whole world seemed to become extraordinarily beautiful, and Emily finally understood that life is always full of hope. As long as she bravely moves forward, she can usher in her own happiness and new life.